This conference will now be recorded.
Welcome. We have some guest speakers today, and the first one up is Officer Tovar.
Good morning, everybody. How we doing? Thanks. Hey, thank you again, guys. Thank you. I won't take too much of the chief. I promised you a few months ago, if for those of you who were not here, because I know a lot of you folks were still back in cold country. But our new chief just started with us. I say just. It's already been a half a year now since July. And I'm not trying to score any points, chief, but I know, honest to goodness, the environment of the police department and the positivity has grown immensely. And I'm being sincere on that. So that's it. All right. So I think we got a good one. So I'll turn over Chief Benny Pina.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you all for the invitation, the opportunity to meet all of you and explain to you a little bit about what your police department is doing and how I'm hoping to shape our future and make certain that the entire community is safe for years to come, and that we build a foundation that can't ever regress back from what I hope to accomplish. And so, yes, I'm new to Surprise, but as you can tell, I'm not that new. I've been for 32 years. I started as a patrol officer in Phoenix in 1989. I spent 25 years there in various assignments, as they always tell you that. But highlight for me, I ran the homicide unit for 4 years in Phoenix. And so if any of you were in town back then, the kind of major cases going on were serial shooter and the baseline killer case. And I managed the baseline case. I started the other one, but I had to pass it off because he hadn't killed anybody in Phoenix yet, just shot a lot of people. And one of the other lieutenants closed the case out. But during that time, unprecedented amount of violence out there. And so it kind of wraps around what we're trying to accomplish, I think, as a law enforcement community in this county. And, you know, this is a very unique town in terms of the support that all of us have from our mayor and council and our city management. They work very well together. And if you didn't know, we just got Bob Wingenroth started in early January, but he was the city manager here about 3 years ago. And he's returned back, and he is a phenomenal servant leader who has, he doesn't promise things, he comes through with things. So he's got an economic development background like no other. And we have a great opportunity as a city to grow and expand the services we have. And so reality is we're becoming a big city. With the spring training facilities that we have, the growth and development that we foresee, and the businesses that are coming here, but we still have that small town feel. And that is the challenge, is to keep that connection with all of our citizens. And so that's where I'm taking the department in an opportunity to grow and still be the community-oriented police department that you expect and that will engage with you in a positive way at all times. So Chris can talk a little bit more about, you know, the specifics of crime prevention, but I will tell you, do not feel that you are ever bothering with anything that is that you consider to be a minor issue. Let us know about it. That's how I get resources. We do the professional admin side of stuff, is the number of calls that come in, the priority of what they are, how many investigations we do. All that generates statistics for me that allows me to decide how many folks I can ask our city management and our mayor and council for. And so if you have minor pains, issues, thefts, and by the way, the little secret, you guys are the haves. People want your stuff. So we got to keep it locked up. And you have nice things. And you know that. People that don't like to work and haven't put in time are going to come try to take it from you. There's no secret about that. And so I need your help. If we keep things locked, whether it's doors, gates, garages, keep track of things. But if something does happen, please call us. Let us know. We care. Oftentimes, if to run an investigation is the jigsaw puzzle, and there's pieces all over the place. Always put those pieces together, but sometimes the pieces aren't from my case. They're from another detective's case. And so if we look at our analytics and we see something happening in a trend, and there's multiple thefts, and we know that there's certain types of things being stolen, like golf carts, then we can go find, in golf clubs, I have folks that go out and look for that stolen property, but oftentimes it's not identifiable. And so I ask of you, yes, please try to lock stuff up, keep track of it, but call us when, and oftentimes we know something's stolen, but we can't tie it to a report in an investigation. And so those little pieces, when we put them together, all lead us to be able to solve multiple crimes at one time, because the pieces are from the different reports. A car description here, a person description here, a partial plate here, and then we piece it all together. And please call us. You're not bothering us. That's our opportunity to engage with you. And so the couple of things we've just reorganized, we put some folks in places that we've never had before. We're expanding our motor unit. I know traffic is always an issue because of the the open roadways, the speed, although the speed limit is probably respected in a community like this, it often isn't to everybody else who's rushing around and just always late and creates a hazard. So we've doubled our motors since I've been here. And when I say that, it's an impressive figure when you say double, right? 100%. We went from 4 to 8. So you see, we're taking little bites of the apple, but we're going to get to the whole thing eventually, and we'll expand. But if we have to do growth and not waste tax dollars, I'm very conscious of that. And again, this community is, we know the type of support we have. So the two things I want you to take away from this is, number one, like I said, there's nothing too small for us. We're your police department. We want to interact with you. If something bad happens, we need to be made aware of it. Whether it is, there's no such thing as petty stuff. And the second thing, when I say you're the police department, I absolutely mean that. So how many of you have grandkids, extended family elsewhere with folks between the ages of 21 and 35 to 40? I think everybody's hand would go up, right? Okay, so send me them. If they have any interest at all with being a police officer, send them to me. If you vouch for them, we'll hire them. It's a long process. It's a long process to get through, and it's hard, but nobody wants this job right now because everybody paints it in such a negative light. And I'm telling you, it is in the bottom of my heart. I get up every day knowing that I'm doing good in society. And if I can tap that folks right now and get their mind right that it's not negative, we'll train them. They'll have the best equipment, the best training, they'll have the best leadership to get them to have that emotional impact in a community. This isn't a job, it's a way of life. And people don't understand the job satisfaction, their own life satisfaction until they put this badge on, and it means something. So please send me anybody that had an interest. Dispatch, we have civilian positions. We're always hiring. Our website's got all the info, but please be our recruiters because this is a destination. You all chose this city for a reason, and that's what we're marketing. And I'm really on the business side of stuff, but it is marketing to the young folks now, whether we're on social media, and everybody loves TikTok now, short videos, attention span is short to get young people to want to come join this career. And it really takes about an hour for us. Once we get our recruiter, get their nails into them, and we hold on to them. Good people, good people, please send them to us. And that's the hard part of recruiting, but it's your community, your police officers. And so when I say don't hesitate to call us, it's because that engagement that I need with my officers, with you in the community. So if you see them out and about, please thank them. Don't thank me. They're the ones doing the work. Thank them for their service. Thank my line level folks, the patrol officers are every day. Out there, they'll usually have, now they're all got them all in surprise polo shirts that kind of look like the uniform, but they're soft clothes. I want our community to be proud of them, let them know that we're not going to be doing anything negative that's going to bring discredit to the city. That's my job to guarantee that, and that's where I stand before you. I'll be judged by that. We won't have officers doing dumb things on video. We train to a high standard, and I want you to be proud of that department, of this department. It is your department, okay? We're very conscious of the fact that everyone in this city that's a taxpayer and has hard-earned money invested in us has to get a return on that. And that's why I say engage with them, talk to them, let them know how much you're appreciated. That's what keeps them motivated. There's no amount of speeches I can give unless they see the appreciation. The second part of that for them is they work harder for you when they know you. And that's the emotional relationship we have. When they drive by a house, they drive by a community, they don't know the people in there. When they get to know them, when everybody knows Chris Tovar's name, he spreads that love to everybody else. But when that patrol officer who's working on shift 3 in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's cold and it's lonely, and there may not be anything to do except they're driving around looking for open garages or looking for anything moving, and they know the people in that house, they work harder. And that's why I say, make sure you shake a hand, thank them, whatever you can do for my officers. I very much appreciate that. So, and with that, Chris is my communicator. He's the channel. If you need anything, you've got any questions. Also, if we have volunteer opportunities, make sure you let him know. If it is very unique. It is literally the diamond in the rough. A lot of people don't know about it, but we're about 50 strong right now. They do active patrols, but they also do some administrative stuff at the station. Whatever you think you can offer us, we'll take. It's a phenomenal group of folks. The camaraderie is there. The teamwork is there. They're part of our family. They stand. Ooh, there we go. They stand with us in the streets doing traffic control sometimes. If that's not what you're looking for, we'll find something for you to do. But they are completely committed to keep our city safe, and they're your neighbors all over Surprise. Because they are also great advocates for us to send us young police officers, young dispatchers, and some of our support staff on the admin side. So with that, make certain if you got any questions, Chris knows about it. Let him know of any concerns. We're very active. I'm always out and about. So if you guys have other meetings, don't hesitate to let me know. If you got specific questions, or if you got ideas to do some kind of community, let us know. Okay. And I thank you for your time, and I wish you all well, and we'll talk soon.
Wait, did you say turn your mic on?
Yeah,
Who's
that helps.
Mike?
He's in the back running the show.
Oh, okay. I thought you were running the show.
No.
Oh, man.
Good morning, happy trails.
I didn't-
A few months ago, Pat McCormick, who has contacted me and said, you know, it'd be really nice if you could do the history of happy trails like you did 11 years ago at the 25th anniversary. So I said, fine, we do that. And originally we had Jerry Andrus, who was the founder of Happy Trails, was going to join us, but he changed his mind. So he's not with us, but I'm Koops, K-O-O-P-S. Official name is Richard Koopmans. I live at lot 153. And with me is Elaine Stussy, and she was the general manager and VP of marketing when we first started out. So one thing for those of you who are watching us on the internet, Pat McCormick is in the back monitoring you. If you have any questions, put them on the chat and she'll ask them for you. Anybody in the audience, if you have any questions, where's the mic that they're going to use? In the back of the room. So if you have a question, raise your hand, wave your arms, and we'll get the mic to you. Okay, Elaine.
Okay. I may not look like Jerry Anders, but hey, I can stand in for him. So it's really funny here. I get to pretend to be Jerry and tell you some things that only he knew. But first, I want to give you a little context. When this began, it was the early 1980s. So you need to take yourself back. By the way, congratulations. This is an amazing resort. And I think anytime you do something and you're part of something in its foundation, it's dreams. And I currently still always about dreams and visions. So it's great to see your smiling faces. If you go back to the 80s, you remember masks were something you just wore at Halloween. We had Ronald Reagan as our president. We didn't have COVID, but we did have a new disease called AIDS. And everybody was anticipating 1984. George L. Orwell told us all about it. We didn't realize it wouldn't get here till about 2020, all the Big Brother stuff. But Michael Jackson wanted to rock with us. And let's see, Barbra Streisand was a woman in love. Madonna was still a virgin, or at least remembered what it was like to be one. And let's see, our kiss was on somebody's list. And oh yeah, it was about you too, not me too. So it was a different time then. It was a rocking 80s. And I was a woman in business. I was young and cute then. We're all old enough, you can't tell from that far away that I'm not. So at that time, in 1983, I attended an American Resort Developers Association meeting in Houston. At the time, I was president of a resort in the Kansas City area, and there were not very many women in our industry, so I got to stand out. Also present at that conference was a group from Thousand Trails Resort. So how many of you are members or were members or familiar with Thousand Trails? Oh, a lot of you. So if I describe things badly, just, you know, you can get with me afterward. And by the way, this whole presentation will not be perfectly sequential. I noted that from your notes. Oops. So in '83, Jerry Andrews was at that conference. Thousand Trails was a fabulously respected organization in that larger organization. And what Thousand Trails was a network of RV resorts and campgrounds, mostly at that time in the Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, Northern California, Oregon, Washington, about 20,000 members. And so Jerry had talked to me a lot about Thousand Trails. And one of the programs they had was something called intrapreneurship. So several of you are probably entrepreneurs, right? So an entrepreneur is somebody who's in a corporation, and rather than going out and starting your own thing entrepreneurially, you bring business ideas into that organization. So that's what Jerry had done. And at Thousand Trails every Saturday at the resorts, they had a thing called Meet the Manager. Any of you ever went to a Meet the Manager? It's funny, at my resort, we didn't want to do that because we were afraid what everybody would do to the manager. But Thousand Trails was better. So they had that, and it kept coming up in those meetings that people loved coming to the resorts, but they could only stay 2 weeks, and then they'd have to go out of the system for a week. So what they said was, you know, it'd be really great to have a place where we could go, a warm place where we could go in the winter and just stay. So this came up enough, and so Jerry listened to that because he was vice president of resort operations. And so his entrepreneurial idea was to develop resorts, Happy Trails as we know it here, was a pilot, and then to do them across the country in Sun Belt areas. So he was telling me about this, was stars in my eyes, and thought that would be a fabulous thing to do. And who knew that was October, and by February I was actually employed by what then was Thousand Trails Development Corp. Together, you tracking with me so far? As Thousand Trails grew, they were a public company, but they were being helped in their financings and loan. Western was the Driggs family. They were located here in the Phoenix area. Financial relationship between Thousand Trails. Roy Rogers was also a spokesperson for Thousand Trails. So there was a natural affinity as they started coming up with this idea for these home-based ownership resorts to have somebody be a spokesperson who could speak well, who would bring credibility. Roy at the time, I think, would you hand me that shirt? Roy at the time was in his early 70s. So I think he was the demographic that we thought at that time, how wrong we were, that we thought it would be mostly people, you know, in their 70s or so. And so people knew and loved and respected Roy. So they wanted to get Roy, they called this big meeting. Jerry could have told this story so much better. And he would have held his finger and gone, those of you who know Jerry, So they call a meeting in Seattle, and it's the management of Thousand Trails. Jim Jensen, Jerry Horn, Jerry Anders, the financier, Gary Driggs, and they invited Roy Rogers and his manager, Art Rush. And they laid out the whole concept to him, asked him to be affiliated and be the spokesman. And he said, man, I am in. I love the idea. We'll be there. And so Jerry had these shirts made. I'm going to show them to you. Now, what you need to know, and you won't be able to see it, there are only 7 or 8 of these shirts in existence. This is the only one known to mankind that exists. And if you could read it, what it says is Roy Rogers, Happy Trails Resorts. So they gave out these shirts. Everybody put them on. They were really cool. Roy took it home, Exhibit A. No. Roy took it home and showed it to Dale, and that was just, he thought this was just great. Well, the next morning, the management at Thousand Trails got a call, and all was not well in the Rogers Evans household. So Roy said, okay, here's the problem. I show the shirt to Dale, I wear it, and she goes, great. Okay, now I'll embellish a little. Buddy, it says Roy Rogers, Happy Trails. You see, Happy Trails was Dale's song. Dale wrote the song. And so she said, you know, if anything's going to have Happy Trails on it, it should include me. So Roy calls up, you know, and says, hey, I got this problem. Can you help me? Do you think we could include Dale? The manager's like, oh yeah, that's great. 2 for the price of 1. And so that's how it became Roy Rogers, Dale Evans, Happy Trails.
Mike, could you put up picture number 6, please?
That's Gene Antone.
No, he is getting to it.
That's not. Oh, there we go. Jerry Anders, Roy, and Dale. You. Thank you. So, and if you don't know the story of Happy Trails, Roy and Dale were in radio, and they had a theme song that was kind of so-so, not very Western. So Roy used to sign his autograph, Trails of Happiness. And so Dale got the idea they needed a new theme song, and really in a matter of hours wrote the theme Happy Trails, and they used it on their radio show, and the rest was history. All right, so once they knew that they wanted the resort and they had Roy on board, then they needed the land. And the way they came for it, of course, they talked to Gary Driggs about it. And he said, I've got it. I'll be glad to do the financing. I have a fabulous piece of land. And they said, great, where is it? And they said, that's a surprise. So indeed, it was a surprise. You know, they named the town a surprise because somebody said, it's so small, I'll be surprised if it ever becomes a town. So in 1983, when we talked about it, we think the population is surprised at 1,000, 3,500, 2,000 souls lived in Surprise in those years. And now it's bucking up against 150,000, as you know, every time you drive down Bell Road. And Coops is going to show you great pictures and tell you wonderful stories about Cotton Road and dirt roads and so on. But it was a surprise to Thousand Trails, but they figured, hey, this was a great opportunity. And it was a beautiful, beautiful location. And so that's how we owned the land, and they were financiers. And you know what they say, the man with the gold makes the rules. So that's why we ended up here. Let's see. Gutman's. Vacation villas. This is an interesting thing. So originally, this was just to be a resort for RV people. I didn't hear Jerry say this, but Coops swears that this is true, that Jerry said, look, people who live in RVs are living in RVs to live. People go and get into mobile homes to die. So those words came back to haunt him when we started realizing people didn't necessarily want to be hauling home with them everywhere. And that's why the vacation villa concept came into being, because they realized some people just wanted to be always able to stay put. So it was a great dream. It was a great vision that Jerry had. And I was privileged to be very early on working with the company. And for me, it was just a dream job come true. I moved to the Phoenix area. I had 2 little kids, and we had a great time. Probably you could credit me or blame me with 3 things at Happy Trails. When I was young and in business, someone said to me, you need to be very careful that you pick carefully your mountains to die on. I learned that as a parent too. That was important. But the mountains that I wanted to die on at Happy Trails, well, 2 were mountains and 1 was an idea. First was, I loved the concept of neighborhood centers. And I thought those were great. And when we were working on our first budgets, those were going to be removed and just have 1 central town center. And I thought it was important to have neighborhood center. Thought I'd lose my job over that, but I didn't. And I think that's proved to be something great. The other thing I really wanted was a giant flag that you could see from miles and miles away. And when we first opened the resort, any of those of you who were new, we had a huge, huge flag. This became a big deal because we could afford the flag, but we didn't realize what it would cost to put up a flagpole that would hold that flag. So we have that flagpole. I noticed the flag we have now is not quite as dramatic as the one we had from the beginning, but that was great. And then one thing that we did as a marketing promotion, and this was something kind of fun. This is where we're out of sequence. Somehow we decided that it would be really fun if you brought friends to the resort, that we would have a club for referral people called the Roundup Club. And so we put together little things, bags, and we got together lots of little fun gifts. And every month on the 24th of the month, we called it Roundup Club Eve. If you hung your little bag out on your lamppost, it was usually my 2 little girls and I would come out after dark like Santa and riding our golf cart and fill those with little gifts and toys. And that was something really fun we did. And we came up with the idea, not our advertising agency, but our advertising agency thought it was so clever that they entered it in a contest nationally, and Happy Trails won some great national marketing award for your Roundup Club. So if you still got your bag, hang on to it. All right, now we're going to switch to the part that Elaine talks about. That was all Jerry, you missed it. In the first people to come on board was our architect. And the architectural firm was Peter Lendrum and Associates, otherwise known as Pala. Coop will talk more about Pala. And so then the rest of the team began to be assembled. And Coops, this is where you get to use your pointer, because you know who all the people are.
Go to photo 1, Mike.
Right. So this is the team of players. First of all, you just saw Jerry Anders, and he was the president of the company. This is Jean Antill. Jean was the administrative assistant who kept us all in line at the very beginning. She got us here, got us food, got us on airplanes, made sure we had cards, name tags, sweaters. We wore green sweaters, white shirts, and khaki pants. Green wasn't my best color, but as a marketing person, I decided that wasn't a mountain to die on. What can you say? Okay, and then, oh, that's
went the wrong way, Mike.
Okay, that's our salesperson. So we had our first sales guy was a guy named Arthur Lane. Some of you might have met Arthur. He was really funny. What was funniest about him is he said every time he came to work, he'd drive into park and there was a little sign that said fire lane. And he always would go, fire lane, I'm gonna lose my job. But he was a good guy. Next person, Coops came in, Richard Koopsman, Vice President of Finance and Development. He was kind of crazy. It was the 80s. Did you have hair in the 80s?
No.
No, I don't think you ever.
Never.
Yes. Wasn't he cute? Sonia, look at him. He's, and you know what's amazing about that pictures you didn't have on shorts. That's amazing. So that's Fred Fleming. Fred Fleming was the greenskeeper and head of maintenance. Fred was a great guy. He was here for quite a while. He loved it. He loved it here. Then we had Jack Dean, who became the general manager. Jack was thinner when we first met, and he did have hair, I remember. And Jack stayed with the resort a long, long time. So, and he was an old football friend of Jerry's. The story is one or the other of them passed the ball. I think it went to Jerry, passed the ball to Jerry and broke his finger. So hence he had to be friends with him his whole life. And then Ken Edelbeck, and Ken is still here. Stand up, Ken. Ken was a park model salesman from 85 to 2000, and he had models here on site. And in 2000, moved to his current location named Resort Homes. And then we also had an advertising agency called Cobbs and Brady out of Chicago, and they just always wanted to come to Arizona and spend the whole winter here. That's what I noted. All right, Coops.
All righty, thanks, Elaine. You know, save the applause till the end. As Elaine said, when we first started, we were called Thousand Trails Development Company. And soon we realized that's a crummy name to have when we're going to call ourselves Happy Trails. So we changed our name to Happy Trails Resorts shortly after the groundbreaking. Next picture, please. The groundbreaking was held on my 40th birthday, which was September 7th of 1984. And this is Cotton and Bell Road before that day. And as you can see, there was nothing here. We were in the middle of a farmland. There's been a lot of speculation as to what was grown here, and I'm here to tell you, before we started construction, the product that was grown here was cantaloupe, because as we were developing the property, we would find more cantaloupes volunteering and growing in the ground. Next picture. Here is the sign that we had that talked about the resort and who the people were that were involved in it. Next picture. That's Roy and Dale at the next picture. When we started doing a fast track project to get the information center, which is now the pro shop and the grill, some of the vacation villas, neighborhood center 1 and section 1, all built in a big hurry so that we would be ready for sale 3 months later. Well, things didn't go as planned, and as you can see from this picture, we had a big rain monsoon hit us. This is the piece of the building up there that is the realty office. And you can see at one time it had 2 feet of water in it. So we got delayed for several weeks while we dried things out. Back to one of the bare land. Previous. There. And as you can see from this, there's a lot of mud and water standing on the roads. And the roads, when they got wet, the dirt has a thing called caliche in it. And what that does is when it rains, it turns into slipperier than ice. And so we had a lot of people coming down Bell Road, slipping and sliding along. A lot of them went into the ditch. So one of the first things I did when I got here is I bought a 4-wheel drive tractor so we could haul people and their rigs out of the ditches. And when we first got it and it was being delivered, Jerry says to me, "Why in the heck did you buy a tractor?" And I says, "Just wait, you'll see." And it got used a lot. When we were first getting started, we were in Maricopa County. We were not in the town of Surprise. We hadn't been annexed in yet. And so we had to rezone from agriculture to residential. And in that process, we decided that we would make a presentation to the town of Surprise, even though they weren't our boss yet, but we wanted to make it to them because they could argue against us about our rezoning. So we got Pala, the guys from there, and our team, and we put together a dog and pony show, and we went to a city council meeting and put on about a 20-minute elaborate show saying, here's what we want to do. And so we're sitting there ready for them to ask questions and to argue with us. And there were only 3 people on the council at that time. And the main guy, the chairman of it, raised his hand and he says, we only have one question. How soon can you get started? At that time, as all of us moved to Phoenix that were on the team, we would meet other people in the Phoenix area, and they would say Happy Trails, and a lot of people would say, "Oh, really?" Well, there was another Happy Trails that was a drug paraphernalia store, and they had 3 or 4 stores in the area. When we got started, we hired a construction manager. For those of you in construction, know what that means. And what it means is the general contractor bid it. He was going to get the bid. The contract manager was going to get the bids from the subs and manage those people. So we hired Joe E. Woods, who at that time was the leading contractor out in the Mesa area. And they joined up with us. And as we started construction, you can see there's some power lines, but there are no phone lines anywhere out here. The closest phone was 5.5 miles away. So we had to use, and this is when cell phones were really starting to take off. So all the key people had to have a cell phone. Well, background, and there were those great big bricks. The bills were outrageous. My bill averaged over $1,000 a month. Yeah, but that was the only way we could communicate between the architects and the engineers and the contractor and us and Elaine and Jerry. Okay, back to you.
All right. So I'm better when I move. I think Robert Redford said that in a movie, Sundance Kid, remember? I'm better when I move. Concurrently, we were on the fast track, as you heard, and the golf course was being done, that was in process, the information center was being built, and then we had, of course, that beautiful delay due to the monsoon. I mean, who knows? We thought we were coming to the desert. A lot of us had a lot of things to learn living in the desert. So one was about monsoons. And then the management team also was busy background. Mostly, we had a public report that was required by the state of Arizona that had to show, what the land was going to be used for, what the plan was in general, who was going to provide utilities. And so that was a big part of what Coops worked on. I worked with a team that developed the covenants and restrictions, the design review committee, and all the things that you all have changed over the years. Fortunately, you have a mechanism to do that, so at least that worked out. So one of the things that happened in here, we had this beautiful resort with these streets, and we had Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. Everybody decided this was going to be a premier RV resort. I keep saying that because that's how it started. And it was going to be beautiful and different, and we were going to differentiate ourselves with the sophistication and quality of this resort. So whatever we did not want, we wanted, probably like Wilshire Boulevard and Mulholland Drive and, Fifth Avenue, something like that. So we delayed and delayed to do the streets, and nobody could come up with names for the streets. So one night, one afternoon, I get a call, and it's Coops in a panic. And he says, okay, here's what came down. The architectural firm says the only thing we need to do is name these streets, and we need to name them things that have to do with Roy Rogers and Dale Evans. It's logical, it makes sense, that's who we are, we need to do this. We need to suck it up and do it. And I said, okay, great, we can do that. when do we need to do this? He says, by 10 in the morning. Like, oh, cool. So I have 2 little kids. I live in Phoenix. My kids have to go to bed at night. Coop says, I'll bring my beef eaters. I'll be over at 8. So in comes Coop with his beef eaters. We sat there all night. Now, here's something you need to remember. Remember, we're back, moonwalking here. There's no Google. And I didn't watch that many Roy Rogers shows. So coming up with the names was pretty funny and pretty good. I think we didn't do too bad a job. One critical error we made, and if you ever want to fix this, I think it'd be great. There should be an intersection of Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, don't you think? Yeah. Anyway, we weren't thinking about that, but then we were quick on the trigger, right? Huh? All right. So the first event we had here, we called it our pre-grand opening. We could have called it a not so grand opening. That might have fit as well. Invited then people from Thousand Trails, and I think that's when we came up with the free week concept. Roy and Dale were here and their son Dusty and his band, and we really did have a really great time. And it was a good promotion. And that was kind of the beginning of our sales. The first year we sold, well, the first winter season, we sold 151 lots. And by the end of the year, we'd really sold 5% of the resort. I think 193 lots were sold that first year. Were any of you buyers the first year? Look at you, pioneers, arrows in your back. It's good to see. So after that, we went through that year, and then we decided to do our real grand opening, which was January 29th, 1985. I think Coops has on his grand opening pin. And it was a great event. I mean, the resort was pretty full. We had things open, they were running. Coops could still pull people out of ditches if they landed in them, and everything went well. And Roy and Dale, of course, were here, and Dusty again. I learned that rock stars were not particular to an age group because the stage got mobbed at the end of it. So it's pretty fun. But I did want to tell you one sweet story about Roy and Dale. They were kind of larger than life at the time, very well respected and loved. And they were as neat in real life as they were on screen. They were very genuine, humble people. They were people who really loved God. Jesus was everything to Dale, and they tried to live their lives in a way that reflected their faith. So after our big grand opening, I was the one who got to ride them to the airport. So they asked if we could make a stop on the way. And I said, sure. And so they gave us an address, and we stopped home. So remember, I'd said stopped on our way at a nursing home. Dale had been in radio. So she had a roommate from her radio. Pulled up, Roy took off his hat, which would be his trademark. I mean, that's how people would make him instantly recognizable. And he put on a pair of probably Ray-Bans, it was the 80s. And we went into very discreetly so they could see this roommate that Dale had been with. And it was really, really a sweet moment. And I think eventually people, started buzzing about realizing that Roy Rogers and Dale, they were just visiting with people. And that just is kind of a tribute to the kind of people they are and the legacy we have at Happy Trail.
J.W. Marriott.
Oh yes, I have that in my notes. J.W. Marriott, Mr. Marriott, the elder, actually came to that grand opening. And he was probably in his mid to late 80s then, that year. But he came out to enjoy the resort a bit. And memory of this completely correctly, he dedicated or provided money to build a rec time, and there was not much in supplies. So just gracious people that came and have left their footprints in a resort that now belongs to you. So thank you. Now you get to do all the bad news.
Elaine mentioned the public report that we had to do, and in the state of Arizona, if you are not within the city limits, you have to do what's called a 100-year assured water plan. Picture 10. Here, can you see the mouse moving? Okay. At the time that we started the development, we controlled all the property. This is Cotton Lane along here. These mouse. Can you undo me, Mike? Anyway, we controlled the property all the way. This is the Beards, so the property. The portion we have here was going to be phase 1 of 3 phases. Each phase was going to have 9 holes of golf course on it, so that when we changed the grass from the Bermuda to the Rye in the fall, again in the spring, there would always be 9 holes open for play. So for the 100-year assured water plan, we had 3 wells at the time on this site. There was one here and a couple further out here. I don't know, but this is the one that was being used. And as you can see, there's a tree farm here that was using the water to keep the trees growing. The owner, of course, had abandoned it, and it just sat there. But that well was the one that we were going to use to test. And the way they do that is they send a TV camera down into the aquifer. They measure the well for the level of the water. Then they pump the well for 24 hours with a 12-inch pump. And I don't remember how many gallons a minute it was, but it was a lot of water. All the farmers south of us loved this because they got free irrigation water while we were doing it. Once they got the pumping down, 24 hours later, they send the TV camera down to see where the level of the aquifer is. And guess what? It hadn't moved. So the engineer comes to me and says, so how many homes are you going to have here? I says, well, we're going to have RVs, and they use about 70% of a home. I can certify this well for 10,000 houses without a problem. So you're good as gold. So when you hear people say there's no water here, that's true in some parts of the valley, but it's certainly not true of that well that we have out there. So we put in the well. Next picture, Mike. Yep, that's not the one I want. Keep going. No. What happened to it? Go back. Well, no, go forward. We'll use this one. But there is a picture that shows we put in a trench from the well, which is about where the marker is, and we put in a trench out here to the water tank, which sits out on the north end of the property, and it's still here. Now, it's not being used anymore, but that was the source of our water. And you'll also notice over here is the sewage treatment plant. That happens to be where the ranches are today. At this time, we then started a Bell Road development improvement district to improve Bell Road from the 2-lane muddy road to what it is today. And how that worked is all the developers and all the people who own property along Bell Road had to contribute based on how many feet they had on the road. And the thing got started with the developer of Sun Village. The main guy was Dean Rickvile. And he also owned all the property on the other side of Bell Road from Happy Trails. So he was very interested in getting the road done because he knew what it would do to his property out here. So we put together the district, and there was one small farmer that had about a 40-acre citrus grove that says, I can't afford it. I don't have that money. It was a husband and wife and mom and pop type operator, and the Happy Trails agreed to pay their portion of it. And where that's located, when you drive down Bell Road, on the right-hand side, you can see a reservoir with a fountain. That's where the Citrus Grove was. So when they were building Bell Road, the contractor, the landscape contractor was doing it. He took all those trees and brought them out to Happy Trails, and we planted them here at Happy Trails. One other thing is, you see this portion right here? Of the bear to be a commercial skirt where there's no roads. We had reserved that strip mall because, as you can tell, there's nothing around us. We had nothing. The closest grocery store was 7 miles away, and gas stations were that far too. And the grand plan, my grand plan, was to have a restaurant sitting right on the corner where the cursor is, and it was going to be the Rusty Pelican, and that was a restaurant that was here in town, and they were built out of wood. They had a watery theme, and it would fit in perfectly, sitting on the lake, looking at the White Tank Mountains and watching the sunsets. But of course, that didn't come to fruition. The final developer wound up putting those into lots where some of you people are now. The first day of golf was November of 1985. That's when we first started playing the 9 holes that we have now. Here, if you can see it, here's where the ditch is, storage tank. And a lot of what's now the mobile homes, this area in here was reserved for future vacation villas if that concept really took off. In January of 1986, the senior tour, what was called the senior tour, now it's called the Champions Tour, the old guys, the 50 and over older golfers, they always had their first tournament at Hillcrest over in Sun City West. And in 1986, they had about 30 guys more than the field could take. So one of the guys pro at Hillcrest and says, is there any place we can go have a 2-day mini tournament for the rest of us? Time of the year, but there's this new RV resort down the road, and they've got a 9-hole track, and the guy says, we don't want to play a pitch and putt. And he says, no, well, it's the only thing available, go try it out. So Fred Fleming, of course, got the call from the Hillcrest pro and say, and he told him the story about the pitch and putt thing, and so fix them. So he put the tees all the way to the back. He put the pins in the most god-awful places. And back then, we only had 9 holes, but we had 2 pins on each hole. And you'd play the red ones the first time around and the yellow ones the second time around. Anyway, the pros come out, and the best score shot was 78. And the pros all come in, and they're just fuming and ranting, and Raven says, this isn't fair. You said you didn't want to play a pitch and putt, so we gave you one that wasn't a pitch and putt. So the next day, Fred was very kind and gentle and changed it. And the average score was under 70 the second day. Ken Cavanaugh was the designer of the original 9 holes. A different architect designed the other ones. In '87, it was obvious that the sales weren't going to Jerry's and Western's expectations. And we were both gone. But at that time, and the reason was there was a lot of competition. There was Pueblo El Mirage down in El Mirage. There was a nice RV resort over on Union Hills. There was Sunflower down on Bell Road. There was actually one planned for Coyote Lakes that didn't ever come to fruition. But there was just a lot of competition. When there's and you know what it does, it drives the prices down. And so people weren't buying in Happy Trails because it was cheaper to go rent in one of the other ones. And so Western Savings took control of the resort in the end of '86, December 29th. And they figured, okay, to get our money out of here, we've got to sell the whole resort the way it is. And to do that, we've got a better chance of doing it if we build the other 9 holes of golf. And so that's where what is now the front 9 came into being. Western ran it for a couple of years, and in 1990, they went bankrupt. They only lost $1 billion that year. Think about that. That's a lot. That's, who knows how many billions that is now, but it was a lot. And so the RTC, Resolution Trust Corporation, does, who knows what that is? A few of you, but okay, for those of you who don't, at the same time that Western was going bankrupt, about 95% of the savings and loans in the country were going bankrupt. And so the federal government set up this entity called the Resolution Trust Corporation to manage the disposition of all these assets of the bankrupt S&Ls. And no lots were sold. They were here for about a year and a half. And during that time, no lots were sold because they says, we're not too sure we have clear title to be able to sell the lots because we really don't own the land. It's sitting in the bankruptcy system. So let's go to, not that one. This is, well, okay, this one will work for right now. This is the picture's not that good, but it's the best thing I could find. But you can see now, after Western took over, they took all of this land that was vacant in the front nine of the golf course and expanded the boundary of Happy Trails out to this. Everything, of course, out this way is, next picture, Mike. On January 30, 2011, we had the 25th anniversary of the Happy Trails grand opening. And this is a picture, I think on my deck now, yeah, on my deck maybe. And these were the key players that were involved with Happy Trails, getting Happy Trails going. On the left, Ken Edelbeck, who you all know, Jack Dean, Elaine. And in the front, this is Larry Bermonti. He was the project architect for Pala. And this one is Ken Kavanaugh, and he was the golf course architect. Next picture. No, should be the one of Jeff Powell. Backwards. Didn't get in. Well, it didn't get in. The one person that was, okay, missing from that picture was Jeff Powell, and he was the project manager for Joey Woods, the contract manager. And when we started, I got, we sat down and we says, guys, to get this thing done as fast as we want to go and to get it done, bickering that goes on between the architect, the engineer, and the contractor and the owner. So let's work as a team. If there's an issue, we'll solve the issue after the construction is done. So we did. So we worked really well together. When there was something, for example, in the bid documents, there was nothing for putting in the street signs, for the installation of the street signs. The street signs were in the bid, but not the installation. And so, okay, we're going to put that in, let's get her done. And it happened. And in a lot of construction projects, it doesn't go that easily, but it went very well. We did have, there was a Ritter, and she was kind of the watchdog to make sure we were spending the money, and it drove her nuts the way we worked, because the actual just get her done approach that we used. There have been a lot of changes since this one, of course, is the one we just did, where we changed the CC&Rs to where you don't have to have an RV to live on property. But as mentioned before, we added the 9 holes of golf plus the driving range. We changed the occupancy rule to 55. Western did that back when they took over, because they mobile homes. And the reason they changed the occupancy was because they had special loan packages for 55 and over people. There was, at the very beginning, how many people soda fountain? Yeah, a few of you. Back where the Nosy Coyote is, office is, there was this was Jerry's most, it was probably the #1 thing he wanted in the resort, was an old-fashioned soda fountain. And so we put one in, and it was phenomenal. It was was back in the early days. People would go there and you'd get to meet your neighbors. And they had on one wall, they had pegs where you'd put your own coffee cup for having your own habit. Well, in 1991, the resort to a guy named Miller. And Miller came in and he was the one that had the auctions. How many people here bought their lot at an auction? Nobody here. The reason the guy wanted the auctions is he figured, I'll get this bidding frenzy going and I'll get the prices up. Well, it went just the other way, and you could buy a lot for $3,000 at the auction. Anyway, Miller was the guy who took
Gonna
out.
come and sit here. This is about the history of
father-in-law was the rich
trails.
Japanese businessman, and he was the one that put up all the money. And Miller was kind of a crazy guy, but anyway, Ken knows him pretty well. But anyway, he went and he took out, he was hurting for money because he wasn't, he was selling the lots for nothing. And so he went in and he dismantled the soda fountain and all the kitchen equipment in the chuck wagon and sold it to get cash. Another change that's major change was that the golf course is no longer a part of the Happy Trails Resort. And those of us that live on the golf course know all too well how that is not a neat thing. But probably the most disappointing thing to me is the change that we made out at the corner of Cotton and Bell. Photo 16. Here's Bell Road along here. Here's Cotton Lane going this way. We're looking to the northwest. Here's the entrance. We had a water feature, and it had a fountain and was lit at night. It had bougainvillea growing behind it. It was gorgeous. Next picture. And here it is up close. That's in C1 in the background. But as you drove down Bell Road at night, it was wonderful because you would see this lit up fountain. Well, it's gone because of water in the pond and because the people can't see into the entrance. And to me, that's the most disappointing change of all the things we did. Now, does anybody have any questions? We're at the point now where we're going to have some questions. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a lot of deep questions, like meaning of life kind of things.
Yeah, no, I mean about the resort. There, a couple people had some questions, and one of them is, why isn't Bell Road straight? Down by the Sun City Grand entrance, it curves and then it comes back. Well, when they designed the road, I went to the guy that designed it. I says, why are you not making it straight? He says, well, straight is boring. So I wanted to give it a little character, and so it'd curve it, which of course is crazy because all it does is cause more accidents. Another question that has come up to me over in the past is, how come there are 2 left turn lanes on Happy Trails Boulevard when you're coming up north towards the town center? There's one down by the gazebo. Now, a lot of people think that left turn lane is there because it takes you onto the path over to Arizona Traditions. And then if you look at the other one that's just outside here of the parking lot, there's a left turn lane for nothing. Well, the reason was those were going to be the left turn lanes to go into the next phase of the development. And that's why they're there. Okay. Yeah, we have someone with a question. Can we get the microphone to her up in front?
And the race is on. Here they come with the microphone. The next question will be all the way in the back.
Well, there's somebody in the back there that has a microphone.
But
Start.
20, yeah, there it goes. Okay. I have a question. Why, I think I know the answer, but I'm thinking that he addressed the address, the 170 17200? Is that because of where the post office is?
No, that's because that was the address that we picked because nobody cared what the address was at that time.
But the
And
entrance.
it's easier having zeros than having 01.
Well, oh yeah,
Yeah.
but the entrance to Happy Trails is 17500.
Correct, correct.
I live down against Cotton Lane. There are so many vehicles that end up coming down Cotton Lane and they have no place to turn around. And if people would let delivery people know, and and friends, that you actually don't come in at 172. There is no 17200. You come in at 175. And even the sign that says Happy Trails, the big sign at 175 says 172. It's just so confusing,
Well, take it up with management. That's not our job.
the management. All right, Jill.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Mickey Aston. I'm on lot 13. And as I talked to you earlier, we've been here since 1985. And do I remember right that Thousand Trails had a second plan for another destination park besides Happy Trails?
Yes, in 1985, a team of us went down to McAllen, Texas. And we were looking at a project, looking at a site down there and meeting with the powers that be down there. And we actually had done a design layout of on the property of how it would be. And but because things financially didn't work out here, that wasn't going to happen and didn't. We were also planning on doing one over in the Palm Springs area and one down in the Florida area. The town center was built in 84 and 85. And one of the reasons for the delays in having the grand opening was because of this room right here. The beams you see up here were not the beams that were originally designed. The architect and Jerry wanted to have this really woodsy, rustic feel, so they wanted to use beams that were 2 feet by 3 feet by 60 feet long. Well, they make those, but they don't make them dry enough to be able to use in this kind of a facility because they keep drying. And as they dry, they shrink. And ultimately, so there was a big delay while they took them out. They cut them all out. They took them off over on the property here, put a big fence around there because there was going to be a lawsuit. And so then they redesigned them to use the beams the way they are now. I don't know how the lawsuit ever turned out, but that's what happened.
Isn't there something special about the floor in the ballroom, in this room? There's something special with square dancing or something?
Oh, yeah, I think it has some special kind of floating floor. Yeah. Am I on now?
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's always good to be turned on. I think there is a floating floor here. So this is the place where you actually can dance all night and your feet shouldn't get too sore. So I think that was well planned. They foresaw it as perhaps having ballroom and having dances and having lots of things going on in here. That's an amazing question.
I had a question back here. I was just curious about who owns the land where the water is there, and was the golf course sold? Was the golf course sale purely a financial to raise
I
extra
can't
money?
quite hear you.
The question is, who owns where the water is there? And the second part of that is, was the golf course, that transition, was that just for financial reasons was sold?
Was the golf course sold for financial reasons
Yes.
separately?
Yes. The final developer, which was called Happy Trails Acquisition Limited Partnership, they were the final developer. And once they turned everything over to the homeowners association, they hung on to the golf course because it had value and They wound up selling the golf course to the people that own it now.
Right. And the first part of your question was about water. Who owned the water where?
In the picture, who owns Horizon?
Who owns the land?
Well, when we started, the resort owned it. The resort owned everything. Happy Trails Resorts, actually Western Savings owned everything. And then over the years, they would turn over like they turned over the NC1 and all the streets there early on, like in about 86. And then progressively would turn over the assets. But the final developer who had control at that time owned that water that you're talking about and owned the golf course. And he then sold it to the current owner.
So the golf course has to rent the water out from?
No, the golf course owns well, there is no water there now. It's a dried up lake. And yes, the golf course owns the land.
Who owns the water rights?
Yes, they buy the water from the irrigate.
I think that's a sore spot with Mr. Koopmans.
Very. It's really sore because when I left Happy Trails, my going away gift from Jerry was a lifetime membership to the golf course, which of course died when Western went bankrupt. Go to the picture of the snow, Mike. This is a picture taken from the 10th green in January of 1986, looking at the White Tank Mountains. And as you can see, that's snow up there. It's not a cloud, it's snow. It snowed in Phoenix both in December of 84 and December of 85. And Jeff Powell, the guy that worked for the contractor, he was the one that took this picture in January of 1986. Okay, if there's nothing more, we're going to end the meeting in the tradition that there's one more question, I think.
Not a question. I just wanted to let you, Pam and Jim Nolan, 6 days ago, got on a plane to Sacramento to their retirement apartment. They were 94 and 95. And they've been here since 5. And 2 of her brothers had purchased in here. They were Owens's. And now they leave it to us, the cousins, who are Owens's. And we still are in Happy Trails.
Okay, good.
Thank you. There are a couple of changes I forgot to mention. One is pickleball. When we started developing the resort, our goal was to have just about everything anybody wanted to do except lawn bowling. And the reason we rejected that is there weren't enough people that did it and it cost too much to do it. But one thing we didn't know was what was going to happen with the sport of pickleball. Although pickleball was invented in 1979, it really didn't take off as a big deal until at Happy Trails here, until some people got together and they built the first court, and things went on from there to where now there are 16 courts and over 600 members of the pickleball club. Another thing that changed was the Memory Park. Is that the name? Yeah, Memory Park. And the way that got started was a gal wanted to plant a cactus in memory of her husband. And so she went to the developer, who was Miller at the time, and they decided, well, we better have a committee. Everything has to be done by committee here for some reason. We've got to have a committee to decide how we're going to do that. So they got the committee together and they wound that Miller agreed to donate the land where the park is now, and it's grown since then. Anything else? Okay, we're going to end by singing Happy Trails. And we're going to put the words up on the screen, hopefully.
This is the part where we stand up and raise our hands. Hey, come on now. Here we go. There we go. You can wave your phone.
Happy trails, everybody.
Happy trails. Thank you. He did.